Beyond the Cat, True or False, hosted by Killer Orange Cat. Here is a collection of subscriber-submitted stories. Some are real, some are fake. I won't tell you which. You'll only find out at the end of the video. Number 1. Snow Class. I wanted to write you this story specifically, Killer Orange Cat. You put up a lot of winter stories, and I had a scary story that happened during a snowstorm once. It was absolutely the scariest thing to ever happen to me in my entire life. Another reason I wanted to read you my story is that I know you went to my alma mater, Northern Illinois University. Go Huskies. I know that you know what NIU is like, but I think I would explain it to other people. The city of DeKalb is way out in the cornfields of Illinois, but although it seems like maybe being there is like being out in the country, it really isn't. When it's busy, it's like a bustling city. I think there are over 20,000 students who go there every year, and it could be busy all day and night. It's something else, and on my first day there I was quite overwhelmed. We had some bad snowstorms in my sophomore year, and honestly, it was some of the worst storms I'd ever seen in my life. Several times classes were shut down, although it was not one of those times when class shut down that I had a scary experience. This happened when we had a really bad winter storm, but the storm didn't occur until later in the evening. There was no word about canceling classes either. I mean, yeah, the storm was supposed to be bad, and it was deadly cold outside. But it was Illinois, so it wasn't anything out of the ordinary. Still, when I went for my class, I was not surprised to see that there was not a lot of students around walking to class. Normally the campus would be swamped with students, but I guess most of them decided to stay in, even if classes were canceled. It was dark at this point. I had the evening class, and it looked like I might be the only one who was going to be taking it. As I walked over to the building the class was in, I saw two guys hanging out on the side of the building. They were acting a bit weird. When I walked by, they kept looking strangely at me. It made me feel weird. There were about 5 of us in class, and the class was about 3 hours long. I didn't mind, it was pretty neat, and I loved the subject. It was pretty late when class was over. I was walking out of the building, and I was the only one who took that exit that I was leaving from. And when I walked out, I noticed that 3 hours later, those 2 weird guys were in the exact same spot they had been before. I looked away from them quickly and went to walk back to my dorm. It was a long walk, and it was a bit frightening to me. When I glanced back over my shoulder, those 2 guys were following me too. I shouldn't have done this, but I began walking faster, and when that happened, they must have known I was nervous, and they began running toward me. I froze, not knowing what to do at first. I was scared, and I was too scared to even try running. And one of the guys grabbed me by the shoulder. I yelled and slipped and fell. I was struggling with the 2 guys when suddenly I heard this zapping noise. One of the guys fell down. The other guy turned around, and there was that noise again, and he fell down. Standing behind those 2 guys was a much smaller guy. In his hand, he was holding some sort of stun gun, I guess. The guy asked me if I was alright and helped me to my feet. He called the campus police with his cell phone, and those 2 thugs got arrested. I was very thankful, and the guy and I, who I will not reveal the name of, became very good friends. So, did this story happen, or is it fiction? I'll tell you at the end of the video. Hi KOC, if this story is a good fit for your channel, I would love to hear you read it. I am a skeptic, but over the years I've had many things happen for which I still have not been able to find a rational explanation. This is one. Well, it actually happened to my Nana. If my family hadn't heard it, I think it was made up, but it really happened. I posted some of my stories on my personal channel, but I haven't posted this one. I know you want original stories. I have one about a magic butterfly that would be perfect for your channel, but I have that one on my channel, so I'm not sure if you'd want that. In case you want to check it out, I look forward to it. And here's the story. Nana's Dishes. My Nana loved to cook. If you said you liked something she cooked, she'd make it for you until you were sick of it. Oh well, she was a Martha Stewart long before there was a Martha Stewart. She didn't just love to cook, she loved to make it look pretty too. She had an old tea cart that was her mother's, and had just finished refinishing it. She kept it by a window near the dinner table, not long after she was going to visit her mother and run some errands. When she got home, she told my mom and me, on the way she drove past a tiny antique shop. She had never been in it before, and saw some pretty dishes in the window, and felt compelled to stop. She ended up buying the whole set. She said she imagined them on the table with family and friends happily enjoying her newest recipe. They were really pretty, Wedgwood, and the owners of the store wasn't asking all that much. Should that have been a red flag? And she put them on her mother's tea cart, and said to us, "I keep wondering who owned them. I wish they could know how much I like them, and will take very good care of them." Well, she may have received the answer. Not long after she bought them, she called us and said she thought the window by the tea cart was smashed, but when she ran in the room, everything was fine. The next few days, consecutively at the same time, 4 p.m., she heard the same sound of glass smashing. She kept asking my grandfather to come home from work in time to hear it, but my grandfather, who was the skeptic, kept telling her it wasn't a big deal, not to worry. My mom, however, wanted to hear for herself and told my grandfather it was so loud. It sounded as if the window was smashed, and told him he really needed to hear it. He complied with my mom's request, and next day came home around 3:30, in time to hear it for himself. Sure enough, 4 p.m. Smash! My grandfather yelled, "Jesus Christ!" He went running outside. Nothing. There was even fresh snow on the ground. No footprints, no nothing. My grandfather was a builder, so he heard every possible sound and reason for the sounds a house makes, and he checked everything. The next day my grandmother brought the dishes to the little antique store and told the owner she didn't want them, and she ran out without giving a reason or even asking for her money back. We've never heard that sound again. I even found a picture of the pattern. Someone is actually selling them. Number 3. So, I've been a lurker on these true scary story channels and subreddits for a while, and I wanted to share one of my own stories. I'm not sure if it's scary, creepy, or just weird, but in retrospect, it kinda has me thinking, what the fuck was that? I was young at the time and my memories are vague now, but a few things have stood out enough to remember and still creep me out. I'm a late 20s woman, but at the time of this story I was probably 6 to 7 years old. I lived in South Carolina, United States at the time. It was summer and my mom had signed me up for day camp at the local YMCA. I remember that the morning warm-up was actually having the kids dance to the Village People. And please don't get the idea that this is anti-YMCA, because I think they do a lot of good in communities. It was a pretty ordinary day camp. They had sports, arts and crafts, swimming and movies scheduled every day. Kids were split into manageable groups and would cycle through daily activities with various counselors. Typically they would end the day with movies and quiet time, and parents would pick their kids up from the movie room. The first thing that was really off that I remember is kids not being allowed to get water by playing soccer outside. It was the summer in South Carolina and it gets hot. I remember feeling like I was going to pass out if I couldn't get a drink or get cool somehow. I didn't pass out and eventually moved on to the next activity. but I can't think of any justifiable reason to deny kids water. The creepiest thing I remember is that there was a locker room that they had. The kids used to change into swimsuits for the swimming class. There were separate boys and girls locker rooms, but not much privacy. I was a shy kid and an only child, so changing in front of other girls was a horrifying enough prospect to me, and what was worse was that a counselor was in the locker room with us. I am pretty sure it was a female counselor at least, but still. This seemed really unnecessary to supervise. Well, like I said, I was shy, so after one or two of these embarrassing changing room interactions, I thought I would be really clever and wear a swimsuit underneath my regular clothes. Then, when it was changing time, I would just take off my shirt and shorts and be good to go. While most of my memories of this time were vague, I remember clearly that the counselor in the locker room told me that I had cheated. At the time it seemed really strange to me, but I never said anything to my parents, even though I had been taught about good touch, bad touch, but maybe my little brain didn't recognize that people could be creeps without touching you at all. Even though I never said anything about the locker room, I didn't stay at the day camp much longer. Years later, I told my mom about the creepiness of the day camp, and I learned why my mom had taken me out so abruptly. My mom told me that one day when she came to pick me up from the movie time room, she saw multiple bottles of prescription drugs on a desk where kids could easily get to them. The lack of supervision and safety precautions were enough for her. I'm really glad she got me out when she did. I don't know if anything ever happened after I left. I think camps tend to be more thorough nowadays, with background checks on employees who work with children. This is easily the scariest thing that ever happened to me. Now I want you to know that whenever I go shopping or go anywhere with my car, I always make sure the doors are locked. Well, one day I was at Walmart, and I was doing all my shopping. After I was done, I came out of the shopping area and was taking my bags to my car. As I got close to my car, I noticed something very strange. There was someone sitting in the back seat of my car. Whoever it was had long blonde hair, and I could not see their face. I thought about approaching the car, asking who the person was and what they wanted. But the more I thought about it, I thought maybe it'd be safer for me to just go back into the store and get somebody from security to accompany me to the car. So I turned around, went back into the Walmart, and got somebody from security who came out to accompany me to the car. When we got to the car, though, there was nobody in the backseat of my car, but we noticed there was a long blonde wig sitting in the back of the car. I opened the back door, and the security guard picked up the wig, and under it was a hatchet. A chill went down my body as I realized if I had gotten into my car, or if I had tried to approach this person and talk to them, I may have been dead right then. Here's the scariest dream I ever had. Before I start, I want to give a quick history of the house I was living in at the time, because I feel like that plays a part in this. Whether it was a paranormal experience or just a dream, I guess I'll never know for sure. But I always felt like it was more than a dream, and brought on by something in the house. Maybe a ghost? The house I grew up in was fairly old by Australian standards. I'm not exactly sure when it was built, but I remember being told that convicts were used to work the surrounding land, and that the overseers would stay in the house. Originally it was two small separate buildings, connected by a little walkway. At some point the two buildings were joined together, and the veranda was sealed in, making it one ugly vinyl-clad block. I'd been living there my whole life, and for the early part I don't remember much happening, aside from hearing footsteps up and down the hallway between my bedroom and my parents' bedroom. I always figured that it was my dad getting up to go to work, since he was a truck driver and would be up before the sun. After my parents separated and Dad left, the footsteps continued. Not every night, just now and then, so I figured it was probably just Mom getting up to use the toilet. But in the back of my mind, I always felt like it was something else. During my preteen years, most of my experiences involved feeling pressure on my bed at night, as though someone had sat on the end by my feet, feeling and hearing breathing on my ear as I was trying to get to sleep, and one time a sudden yell, which scared the hell out of me. At times, the house would have a feeling of dread. It brought on the kind of fear you feel when you think something's about to get you and you need to run. My sisters would also get this feeling, and some nights we would end up waiting outside in the dark for my stepdad to get home, just because we were too scared to be in the house. Being outside in the dark definitely felt like the better option, and besides that, I was never actually afraid of the dark. I also had a scary experience when I was home alone, and I just finished eating dinner. I put my plate by the sink, nowhere near the edge where it may have fallen on its own. I went back to the lounge room to watch TV, and suddenly I heard a loud smash. I went to see what had fallen. My dinner plate was smashed on the floor, not just by the sink but in the middle of the room, as though it had been thrown with force. Of course I ran outside to wait for someone to get home. When I got older, my stepdad closed in an area of the veranda, so I could have my own bedroom. Up until that point I had been sharing one with my sister. To make my bedroom, my stepdad closed off a doorway that led to my oldest sister's bedroom and created a small walk-in closet for her. I'll do my best to explain this now. I had my bed head against the new wall, so that I was lined up with the old doorway leading to my sister's bedroom. The same experiences continued, but seemed to be more frequent as I got older. At one night I was lying in bed, looking out the window at the stars. We lived out of town, so they were bright and easy to see. I noticed what looked like a light appear by the window, and assumed it was the headlights of a car in the distance, but realized that was impossible, because the light was blue and wasn't moving. It was bright, and I suppose it's what people will call an orb. After staring at it for a little while, it sort of floated towards the foot of my bed and over to my dresser, where it hung for a moment before it disappeared. That didn't scare me, but it confused me. I hadn't seen anything like that in the house before that day. I'm not sure how long it was after seeing that blue orb, but the dream I had went like this. I was standing in the lounge room of the house, looking through the kitchen to the bathroom. The house was set up in a strange way, and with how the medicine cabinet was positioned in the bathroom, if it was left open, you could see who was in there. I was staring at the mirror, because I could see a man in the bathroom smiling. I know this part sounds stupid, but he looked like Freddy Krueger. I wasn't scared at that point, just curious. My oldest sister came up and stood beside me and asked me what I was doing. I pointed at the mirror, and then we were both just staring at the reflection. While this was happening, I hadn't realized that a shadowy figure had snuck up behind me in the hallway. Actually, I later felt like this reflection was a successful attempt at distracting me while it snuck up. It put his hand through my back and began to squeeze my heart. I couldn't breathe and felt like I was dying. I remember it hurting, and I don't know for sure if it was the pain that woke me up, or not being able to breathe. But I did wake up gasping. It really felt like I'd come close to suffocating. It was early morning, and the sun wasn't completely up yet, but it was light enough that my bedroom was well lit. Everything looked blue. I sat up and immediately saw a tall man standing beside my dresser. He wasn't moving, and I couldn't see his face, but I knew he was watching me. I didn't believe I was still dreaming because the shock of seeing someone there made me wide awake. I was frozen and too scared to yell or move, because I wasn't sure if he would attack me if I tried to escape. Like I said, he was tall. I would have to guess around 7 feet. He had on a black wide-brimmed hat and something that looked like a preacher's robe. He was close enough so I could see that instead of having a little white collar thing, I'm not sure what to call it, he had some sort of tartan around his neck. I kept staring and expecting him to vanish. I started to panic, and being too scared to leave my bed, I did the first thing that came to mind, and threw the cover over my head. I remember I was breathing hard and watching the light grow brighter through my blanket. I was waiting for the shadow of this body to appear over me. After a while, I felt like I was suffocating under the blanket, but was too scared to look out, in case he was still there. I eventually fell asleep again, although I don't remember doing so, and I don't remember dreaming again. The next thing I know, it was hot and sunny. I was happy to see I was the only one in my room. I hopped out of bed, feeling a lot better. At this point, I was just putting it off as a bad dream, telling myself that I had hallucinated the man, and was stupid for being so scared. When I went into the kitchen, and caught the middle of a conversation between my oldest sister and my mom. They had apparently both had bad dreams last night as well, and were discussing them. I said, "Oh, you have bad dreams too?" And went on to explain my whole dream, including the man I saw when I woke up. My sister got very quiet for a moment and looked at me like I had slapped her. Apparently, she had seen that man standing in the doorway to her now walk-in closet staring at her, the doorway that used to connect her room to what was now my room. At that point, we were all freaking out a bit, and decided to get the house blessed. I never did see that man, or ghost, or whatever it was again. The experiences died down after the blessing as well, so I suppose it worked, and I'm thankful for that. We moved from the house a few years later, so I have no idea if it's still creepy there or not. And that's my scariest dream, or ghost experience, whichever you want to call it. I don't think the dream alone would have been as scary if the other events hadn't happened after I woke up. Hey y'all, Killer Orange Cat here. Now I will tell you which stories were true and submitted to this channel, and which ones are complete fiction. The story about the girl who's in college and is attacked after class. That has to be true, right? Nope, I completely made it up. Our second story, the one about Nana's dishes. Did you notice the story began like the first story, with someone talking directly to me? That means I made that story up, right? Nope, it was submitted as a true story by Lilacgirl, who submitted it 7 days ago. So the third story, about the girl with the creepy camp counselor who thought she cheated for wearing her swimsuit under her clothing. That has to be a true story, right? Yeah, it is. It was submitted to the channel anonymously. The fourth story, the one about the woman at Walmart finding a stranger in her back seat. Think it's real? Nope. It's an urban legend I heard when I was in the 8th grade. That final story, the one about the nightmare and the two sisters seeing the scary man. What did you think of that one? This story was submitted to me in 2016 by Kelly Lambert. It's a true story that somehow got lost in the fold, which I'm truly sorry for because I thought it was a good story. Well, I hope you enjoyed this deviation from our normal format. But I'll get back to our normal way of doing things in the next video. But until then, please don't forget to make sure to check in your closet and check under your bed because you never know where a Killer Orange Cat is hiding. Good night.